I want to make it clear that I support Donald Trump to be the next president of the United States, and here's the biggest reason. I don't make this about people. This is about the survival of this republic. This is about a chance to break up that Washington cartel, and that's all of them. That's how I look at it. It's a Washington cartel, and he gives us the only chance really to stop this transformation of America, this very disturbing transformation that we've been under for the last 7+ years under Barack Obama and the very left-leaning Democrat Party. You think of the trust that we put in these institutions of government, that's been lost. But I'll tell you what's more surprising to me than the fact that corruption has infected our institutions of government at the highest level. A significant part of the population seems unmoved by it. Okay? Look, you can keep your political beliefs, you can keep your political support, who you might want to win, certain policies you might, political policies, public policies that you might support. But we cannot have our government infected by corruption. I mean, history has shown throughout the world what happens when governments become corrupt. And when you see some of the collusion, this isn't politics as usual. That's what you'll hear. You'll hear people say, well, everybody does it. Well, it's no big deal. No, it's a huge deal. It's a huge deal because of the awesome authority that we give these individuals. And we want to know things are on the up and up. The IRS was used to go after groups whose views differed from that of the White House. The IRS was weaponized to go after, to stifle, to shut the opposition down. You can't allow your institutions of government to be used that way. You have to win those political arguments in the political arena. But to turn things like that, the Department of Justice, with the handling of this Clinton secret server and the handling of classified documents, the erasing of emails or deleting of emails, everybody knows. Even people on her side know, but again, it's this attitude of, well, it's just politics. This is a slippery slope that we're on when our government can no longer be trusted, especially institutions as sacred as the courts, Department of Justice, the White House, okay, the Congress. That's what's most problematic to me is the corruption and people's willingness, the public's willingness to just kind of shrug it off. The Republicans have shown me they lack the political will to perform that thing that they said they'd do if we gave them control of the Senate in 2014. We gave them control of the Senate and not much change. And that's why people fell out of favor, their traditional supporters. And that's why we're where we're at today with Donald Trump as a Republican nominee. People are fed up the status quo. They see, the Democrats, and whether you're Democrat or Republican in Congress, it's the political class. Not much changes for them. They're disconnected from people at ground level, where I'm at every day, and from everyday Americans. They're not listening to us and these sorts of things. So the people have made it clear, at least on one side of the aisle, that they want a different way. They want their government back. And they want faith and trust restored in these institutions of government. They want these institutions of government responsible to the will of the people. It doesn't exist anymore. They're more responsible to K Street, to lobbyists, to consultants and big money and corporations and Wall Street.
Sheriff Clarke, you're obviously an effective, independent thinker out here and a voice for what you really believe. You're an authentic voice in our politics and in our culture right now. I can guess why you're under attack, but why do you think you're under attack right now?
Well, I'm challenging the prevailing liberal or progressive orthodoxy and what it's done to people at ground level, especially in the black community. Okay, if you look at a lot of that which ails the black community, where you have school failure, where you have chronic unemployment, you have inescapable poverty, crime and violence, gang involvement. Not all of it, but a lot of it has been the result of the liberal, progressive, urban policies which have made people government dependent. Once people become government dependent, they tend to stay there. And you know, when you start looking at some of the pathologies that I just mentioned, once you're involved in that spiral, that downward spiral, school failure, chronic unemployment, inescapable poverty, dysfunctional families, you're likely to stay there. So I've pointed this out that you know, we ought to start taking a look and challenging these policies to see if they've been as effective as they're claimed to be. And the answer is they haven't. And so that's a threat to the, like I said, the prevailing orthodoxy.
Recently I heard that in Milwaukee, just recently, there was a pastors' conference of 300 pastors, and half of them were black. And it was all about the important issues for the election for Christians. And they seemed to all oppose Hillary Clinton and support Donald Trump. My question to you is, what's it feel like? What's the pushback that people get who are blacks, who are police officers, who are pastors, for going against the orthodoxy of the Democrats?
The pushback is profound. I hear it every day, but they're not being listened to, and they feel powerless, which causes people to become cynical, and it causes them to drop out, just drop out of the process, don't participate anymore. To an extent, I think that's part of the Democrat playbook. Fewer people involved, the better. Gives them a chance to control more. But you know, I made a comment the other day that got the attention of the I call it big media, liberal mainstream media, and I knew exactly what I meant, and I said it exactly the way I did for a reason. You know, I make the use of social media. I use Twitter a lot to communicate. And you know, it's an alternative source of media. It can get you around the mainstream media that tries to block my message. And the message that I sent, or the tweet I sent, I talked about the corruption, and I ended it by saying it is pitchfork and torches time in America. Okay, people understand that metaphor, but they understand this as well. It took the Declaration of Independence, which back then was viewed as this very reactionary, maybe even a call to violence. I mean, read the Declaration of Independence when they said, you know, it is the duty and responsibility of the citizens to abolish forms of government that don't meet their needs. Okay, abolish, it says. It says abolish. You use words like that back then. You use words like that today, you're considered this, you know, revolutionary. Well, fine. The Founding Fathers did what they felt they had to do at that moment because King George wasn't listening. Okay, the Crown wasn't listening. So it was going to take more than using the traditional avenues to address these grievances with the government, right? You sit down, you talk, you try to reason with people. They did all that. Nothing worked. Nothing got the attention of the Crown. And so they resorted to that thing, the Declaration of Independence, which they had to do, which they knew was going to lead to war. All right, I mean, if you think about it, really the Founding Fathers fought a guerrilla-type campaign. All right. So, you know, you can move through history and you can look at what we had to do to get rid of the institution of slavery. We had to pit American against American in a war. Okay, and yet when that happened, you know, I'm sure everybody, there was anxiety. Oh my gosh, you know, family against family and brother against brother, and you know, the North against the South. It had to happen. I'm not afraid of that sort of thing. So, you know, I said the tendency is, and Judge Robert Bork talked about this in his book, Slouching Toward Gomorrah. I think the subtitle is Modern Liberalism and American Decline. And he said the tendency with Americans is to complain for a little while and then acquiesce, just comply. And it is. And think if that would have happened back in the 1700s, would we be the United States of America today? Think if that would have happened during the institution of slavery, if we would just complain, well, we should, yeah, we shouldn't, but, well, you know, it's okay, let's leave it alone. No, profound change had to happen. So I don't tell people how they should do it. People get it. They'll know what to, the Founding Fathers knew what to do. The abolitionists knew what to do. You know, Frederick Douglass, abolitionist, guy I admire a lot. Read a lot about Frederick Douglass. Loved his spirit. He said this, I'll paraphrase it. Slavery is a system of brute force, and it must be fought with its own weapons. How is that any different than it is pitchfork and torches time in America? It was time for change is what he was saying, and it isn't going to be pretty, okay? You know, you look at, like I said, what the Founding Fathers said about abolishing these forms which bind us now and create a new government. You know, they didn't put in there in the Declaration what it was going to be other than it's going to be a system of self-rule. That's what they wanted. They wanted to rule themselves. But then you can go and look at Bernie Sanders. I've spent this entire summer listening to Bernie Sanders say we need a revolution in this country. And that same media said nothing about, well, that's irresponsible. Well, Mr. Sanders, are you inciting violence? No, it was okay. So I also remember back in 2008 when then candidate Barack Obama attended a fundraiser, and he was asked a question relative to how he was going to deal with Republicans should he become president. And in part, you know, he talked a little bit about it, but in part he said, if they pull a knife, we'll pull a gun. I didn't hear any of these media, this big media, go to him and say, do you think that's a responsible thing to say? No, but all of a sudden, Sheriff Clarke says it is pitchfork and torches time in America, and these people are running around like their hair's on fire. I laugh at this stuff, you know, the way the big media reacts. And of course, their model is to come to me and try to get me to back down or walk it back, or, you know, maybe I was misunderstood. No, I said what I meant, and I meant what I said.
What would you say to broaden out the vision of the mainstream media on what the left is doing under the surface?
You're not going to broaden the vision of the mainstream media. Okay, it's a lost cause. They have abandoned their responsibility as the fourth estate. They have abandoned their responsibility under the First Amendment. Okay, they have become the propaganda wing of progressive politics and the Democrat Party. So they're a lost cause. There's nothing you can do other than, and this will be misinterpreted, but that's fine, because I say what's on my mind. You know, we're going to have to fight a guerrilla type or use guerrilla tactics against the mainstream media. What does that mean? Alternative sources of media. I use Twitter. They can't, for now anyway, keep my message. I have about 320,000 followers, okay? I mean, that's pretty good for a little county sheriff, right? And they're aware of that, and they realize that I have a pretty big following, but use alternative sources of media. I write a blog, okay, the People's Sheriff, and I can get my message. These are guerrilla tactics against the mainstream media who have always been in control of the message because they can block yours. You can write letters. Used to be able to have to do it through letters to the editor, right? And then they get to pick and choose which ones they want, which ones. I don't have to write op-eds to the liberal mainstream media. I have, and they don't print them because it conflicts with their political views. But now we the people, you know, with the advent of alternative media, and there are a lot of conservative, which I happen to be, media outlets that do print my op-eds. TheHill.com is one. So that's what's bothering the mainstream media. There are ways now to get around them.
So you're strong and resolute for all the attacks that you're taking for being a voice that's up against the culture and the political elite. But what about the others? There's more and more blacks, there's more and more ordinary people who are showing courage, but it's frightening out there. It's even frightening to have a yard sign. It's frightening to voice your interest in Donald Trump. What do you say to them to be more resolute or have courage?
I have a platform that I understand that the folks that you mentioned, they don't feel they have a platform. Join one, okay? Join me. I'm not the only one. Join these efforts, because what you have to do to be successful in this is you have to build a critical mass. You can't do this by yourself. I cannot do this by myself. But you know, the left realizes this guy's got a lot of support. He's got a lot. He's not out here by himself. We're trying to isolate him, but we're not being very successful. So for the people who are a little bit afraid, I get it. Because if people knew the threats I get, they'd say it's not worth it. And some days I wonder if it's worth it. But then again, I'm reminded, you know, I have a platform that others don't have, and I can be their voice. I mean, like for the American law enforcement officer, people, cops all across this country come up to me, airports, restaurants, in different cities, and they'll say, Sheriff, I just want to thank you for being our voice. So see, I understand that's the role that I have, the opportunity I have to speak for people who can't speak. Be not afraid. The Bible talks about it. There are bigger, stronger people than me. I don't mean physically. I'm talking about being willing to endure the blowback. People stronger than me. I mentioned a few of them. You know, Lincoln. Frederick Douglass, Ida B. Wells, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He knew it was going to cost him his life. He knew it. It didn't dissuade him. This is not about me. It's bigger than me. So if there's a little faint of heart, because it's not for the faint of heart, join me. Okay, and when I say join me, here's what I mean. I'll do the heavy lifting. Okay, I'll do the frontal assault on this assault on our rule of law and our freedom and liberty here in the United States. I tell them, cover my flanks, because I'm vulnerable to sneak attacks. Okay, that's the way this thing works. All right, most people don't want to take me head on, and like I said, I don't mean physically. They know I'm ready. They know I have the vocabulary for this. They know I can articulate well in clear, understandable language. So they try little sneak attacks, okay? Character assassination, you know, stuff like this, taking my words out of context and, you know, oh, he's inciting violence and so on and so forth. Those are sneak attacks. So I tell people, you know, take to the blogs, take to, you know, talk radio, alternative media, and because the left sees that. Their goal right now is to discredit me, and what they're trying to do is isolate me and get people who might be thinking of following this movement to say, nah, I don't want any of that. I heard I was in a hotel restaurant this morning where I'm staying, and a lady came up to me. She says, you're the sheriff I see on TV all the time. She says, you keep fighting. You keep saying what you're saying. She said, you got a lot of support out here. You know what? She knows it. I know it. And the liberal mainstream media knows it too. My Twitter handle is at Sheriff Clarke, and it's Clarke. You got to put the E on there. A lot of people leave it off and they can't find it. I also do a blog, The People's Sheriff, at Patheos, PATHEOS.com. If you go there, you can see my blog, and I'm pretty active there. That's probably the best way right now. If you see me, you know what? Come up and say something to me. You know why? It re-energizes me. It inspires me when I see just, you know, everyday people come up and say, you don't know how much I appreciate what you're doing and what you're saying. You know, we feel helpless out here. Come up and tell me, because there are days, I'm human. Jenny, there are days I look and I say, I don't even know if this is worth, because it is, if it's worth it anymore, because it is. It's a grind, and it's all consuming. But like I said, I go back to the fact that bigger people than me in American history did it, and over time made a difference. Maybe they couldn't see it. Lincoln didn't get to see it. Okay, George Washington did. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't get to see it. But look where we are today because of people like him, Booker T. Washington, Ida B. Wells, stalwarts. You know, and my name will never be mentioned in the history books alongside. It doesn't deserve it. But you know what? At least in a little way, people will look and go, yeah, we know he was here.
Give us your assessment of the environment that we're in right now, culturally and politically. You're seeing things like James O'Keefe's video that showed that there are linkages up to the Democrat Party that are fomenting violence against the Trump supporters. And you're seeing North Carolina and Indiana, I think, have firebombing of their GOP headquarters. You're seeing more and more threats and violence and intolerance, but you connect the dots. You're probably seeing more. What do you see as you see America right now?
You mentioned the fire bombings, North Carolina and somewhere else. That's upping the ante, okay? And can you imagine if the NAACP took out office space for a voter registration drive? Can you imagine if we woke up one day and heard that it had been firebombed and somebody spray painted on the side of the building, you know, KKK, Blackie, go home? Can you imagine the outrage? Not just from the liberal mainstream media, all right, who like to call all of us on the right racists, Islamophobes, sexist, xenophobes. And there should be outrage. But I'm not seeing the outrage over the fact that a Donald Trump or Republican campaign headquarters is firebombed. All right, the mainstream media, yeah, they showed it. That's how we heard about it. They're not making a big deal about it. Okay, and I don't see the outrage. There's outrage on the right, but there should be outrage on both sides, because the example I gave with the NAACP, if I woke up and saw that NAACP voter registration center was firebombed with some, you know, vile vitriol spray paint on it, I'd be outraged. I wouldn't blame the right, but I'd be outraged. I'd say there's no place. That's intimidation. And the thing that's interesting about that, and I said this tongue in cheek, I was being interviewed on a radio station this week, and I said, you know, I'm sorry, I've been busy all morning channel surfing, trying to find out when Loretta Lynch is going to have her national news conference on what she's going to do about this firebombing in North Carolina, the Donald Trump headquarters. And then I said, I'm also looking, because I'm sure that President Obama is going to take to the East Room or the Rose Garden and have something to say about this. And I said this sarcastically because I knew it was going to happen, and it didn't happen. All right, but I expected, like I said when I used the NAACP example, you know, President Obama he'd even cancel a golf game for that one. And Loretta, and rightfully so. And Loretta Lynch, that's the leadership I'm talking about. You know, regardless of whether it's somebody whose views you don't agree with, we can't have that sort of intimidation. But that's voter intimidation. That, to me, is white voter disenfranchisement. Someone's sending a message. Okay, and if you remember that happened in Philadelphia with the Black Panther Party, an investigation was done, and Obama comes in, and Eric Holder came in, and they ended the investigation and said no voter intimidation would be pursued. And they had the evidence, they knew who. And you just, you know, that's the state that we're in. It's so polarizing that they think they can ignore this sort of thing. Loretta Lynch should have at least issued a press release saying, I have dispatched lawyers from the U.S. DOJ Civil Rights Division to go down and investigate voter intimidation in North Carolina. Nothing. Silence. It's telling. Well, I believe we're in a defining moment. Yeah, it's very tumultuous, but when I look back at history, and I love history, we've been at these moments in the history of our republic. Look at the American Revolution, all right? When you go back and you actually look at it, there were many colonists who were against this thought of breaking off from the crown and told these founding people are nuts. You look at the institution of slavery during the Civil War, very tumultuous time, darn near tore this republic in half. And yet, you know, it was something that had to be faced. and we got through it. We became a stronger nation. We became a better nation. You look at things like the Great Depression. You look at periods like the tumultuous 60s, turbulent 60s, same thing. And so what we have a tendency to do, it's human nature, and we all do it, including me. We look at the present and say, this is the worst it's ever been. Oh my God, everything's falling apart. But I specifically point to the Civil War. Things were literally falling apart. But for a few things that happened during that period of time, you know, had the South had won, who knows what history would have made out of the United States. So, you know, I try not to, you know, freak out and get full of anxiety over what we're going through right now. And there's a lot of racial discord in our country. There's a lot of, you know, political strife going on in this country right now. But I think it's just one of those periods where, you know, when we're done with this, and it will end. I don't know how. This period of turmoil, it'll define a period of history and the growth of this republic. So what's different, I think, this time, though, is the leadership of this country, the political leadership, is not helping us get through the period they're adding to the strife. You look at the Gettysburg Address, because I've said the next president of the United States, you know, you hear these the first 100-day plans. I said the first thing the next president of the United States is going to have to do is deliver a Gettysburg-type address to bring this nation back together again. That doesn't mean everybody holds hands, doesn't mean everybody agrees, but right now we're at each other's throats, and that's not good. So, you know, time will tell, but we've been in these periods of confusion and discord and whatnot. We'll get through it, but it's going to take better political leadership than we're getting right now.